one of the presidential candidates is advocating for corruption amnesty. Do you agree with this?
If you don't mind giving me the name of that, I think the candidate is soft on corruption, and it's a pity that we have a candidate who would say that. I think it's disgraceful to even suggest that you will grant amnesty to persons who have been corrupt. When a person says, I want to grant amnesty, does that include himself? If people are dying every day on account of poverty, and some people steal money, that same class of people say, we will forgive ourselves. How about those who have died? How about the future of those who've stolen? How do you account for that? Oh, we'll forgive ourselves. We'll return some of the money we stole. Then everybody will be happy. That is a complete outrage. It's a disgrace. That candidate should never, ever have made that suggestion. But anyway, he's told us what he wants to do.
People want to know about what has become of the Abacha loot. Recovered stolen, resources.
I mean, we have the most transparent process. What happens is that once money is recovered by either the FCC or any of the organizations that recovers money, it immediately goes into the Consolidated Revenue Fund. If you look at our budget any year since 2016, you'll find a line called recovered funds. You find a line there, recovered funds. Any money that's recovered goes in Consolidated Revenue Fund, is approved by National Assembly for expenditure. So it's very transparent. We don't go and put it somewhere and say, okay, this is recovered funds account, we're taking money from you. No. It goes straight to Consolidated Revenue Fund. It is a line item in the budget. So all of what we're doing, either it is building roads or it is paying for school feeding, whatever it is, all of those come from some of the recovered funds. But let me tell you something about recovered funds, just so that we are clear. Sometimes, okay, so for example, we find that a person has 20 houses that he cannot explain. He can't tell us. I mean, here's a civil servant who earns 200,000, 300,000 a month, and then you suddenly find that he has 20 houses. So what do? We file an application in court asking that, I mean, usually we file an application asking for interim forfeiture. So if the court grants that, we seize the assets, but we cannot translate it to money. We can't sell it until we have a final forfeiture. So between the interim forfeiture and final forfeiture, whoever owns the assets can come forward and say, this is the legitimate way by which I earn this and all of that, and give reasons and all. Then the court will either decide to grant a final forfeiture or simply say that the assets were properly accounted for and give it back to the person if it's the rightful owner of the property. I'd like those in the diaspora or wherever it is that they are calling from to just look at the DMO website. That's the Debt Management Office. The Debt Management Office has a website. Now that website explains to you what has been happening debt-wise in the country. Now, let me just very quickly say that when we were earning the highest amount of money in this country was when our debt burden actually doubled. Our debt burden doubled in 2004 from about 35 billion to 63 billion as of 2014. So you had a doubling of that debt, even during the period when we were earning lots of money. But today, and when I say our debt burden, I'm looking at the total, that is domestic and foreign debt put together and then dollarized, just to make it easier. So if you add today all our domestic debt, all our foreign debt together in dollar terms, it will be about 73 billion. So from 2014 to now, we have added 10 billion US dollars to the debt burden, both local and foreign. That is not at all a heavy debt burden at all. And let me explain why that is not. If it were, those who doubled the debt from 35 billion to 63 billion are the ones that you should be talking about, who mortgaged our future and all of that. And these are verifiable facts. I don't want us to rely on what I'm saying. Just check what the debt management or capital. So the question you should really ask is, what are you borrowing for? We are borrowing for capital. So, for example, we borrow money from China to build our railway. We supply a counterpart fund, about 25%. We pay the counterpart fund. So if the cost of the railway is 12 billion, we pay 25% of that. We put that into our own account and they give the rest. But our borrowing is, especially foreign borrowing, is essentially for infrastructure. And sometimes it just amazes me how it is that people who blew 383 billion, who didn't build infrastructure, then come around today and come and criticize you for borrowing money to build the same infrastructure they refuse to build or fail to build when they ought to have built it. So it's amazing. I mean, some of these things are just incredible. But if you take a look at all of these figures, you will see for yourself. The other point I want to make is that our debt to GDP is about 20%, 22%, one of the lowest in the world. In other words, we have, in terms of our capacity to borrow, we are far from even coming near exceeding our capacity to borrow as a nation. When people talk about an Islamic agenda, they usually talk about maybe 3 or 4 different things. The first, they talk about OIC, which is Organization of Islamic Countries. You know, that Nigeria is a member of OIC. And so why is Nigeria a member of OIC? Now let's explain this OIC. 1969, Nigeria assumed observer status in OIC. We were not members under General Gowon. But as of 1986, General Babangida took Nigeria into the OIC. So Nigeria became officially a member of OIC. Don't forget that between Buhari was president of Nigeria, was the head of state. Between 1983, December 31st, and 1985, almost a 2-year period. That period, Nigeria did not join any OIC. Nigeria never attended any OIC meeting and did not join. He was overthrown in 1985. 1986, Babangida took office and he joined the OIC. So at least, even when he was head of state and he could have done whatever he liked, he didn't join the OIC. Thereafter, Nigeria, as a member of the OIC, were also a member of the Islamic Development Bank, which is, as it were, a component of the OIC. From 2005, every finance minister has been a director of the Islamic Development Bank. Starting with Okonjo-Iweala in 2005, she was the director of the Islamic Development Bank because we are shareholders in it. Thereafter, our own Kemi Adeosun, who was finance minister, also. Today it is Zainab Ahmed because she's finance minister. Every finance minister since 2005. I say this because these periods that we're talking about, they have been Christian presidents, right? So it's not just, so when you talk about 2005, of course you're talking about President Obasanjo, who's a Christian president and all that. But it's very easy not to make the allegation against a Christian president because he's a Christian. But if there's a Muslim, you might say, maybe there's something fishy here. Those who are talking about Islamic agenda. But let me go on to say that that's for OIC. So you understand where the OIC stands. Definitely Buhari has nothing to do with OIC. Secondly, people talk about Sharia. Sharia, they say, the Sharia legal system, this and that. Some even say that, in the Constitution, there are references to Sharia in the Constitution and all of that, which is true. From 1975 or 1976 was when there was a group of people called the 50 wise men. They were picked at the time to debate the Nigerian Constitution and craft a constitution for Nigeria. They became 49 when Chief Awolowo opted out, or the Chief Obafemi opted out. These 49 wise men debated our constitution. One of the big issues in that debate was the Sharia, because several people in that Constituent Assembly felt that the Sharia should be in the constitution to provide especially for civil law between Muslims, so that if you have and this is just civil, and I think, personally I don't like the idea of comparing number of loss of lives in one regime to the other. Because really I don't think it's fair. But the truth of the matter is that since 2011, from 2011 to the present day, we've had herdsmen clashes, farmer herdsmen clashes, in the same local governments. For example, in Benue, Logo local government, Goma local government, 2011 to 2014, we had several clashes with hundreds of people being killed.
Is it religious?
It's religious. It's not really. It's not a religious crisis. It's more a struggle over pasture and water.
It's not religious.
It's not religious. You see, it's easy to make a religious. Easy to give it a religious reputation. But I think that everybody who wants to be fair and straightforward about it will agree that this is really more a struggle for land, a struggle for pasture. So the itinerant Fulani herdsman, people have been saying, "Oh, I'm Fulani." The itinerant Fulani herdsman is looking for water and pasture. So they'll go into the lands of farmers. Clashes begin because they eat up the farm products, the crops. They eat up the crops. So clashes begin. So many times, and that's why you can almost, if you take Benue for example, it's always in the same local government, more or less, especially that local, Guma local government. And also, there are a few other local governments where these clashes have been taking place since 2011. Even if you look at Jos, the clashes in Jos also are restricted to certain local governments. Many times, what you find, and because we have done a good study of it, along with other governors, including the governors of the North Central states that are usually involved, that have these kinds of problems and complications. And we've looked at the problem, we studied it. Everybody fairly, around the table, looks at it and understands that this is really a struggle over land and pasture. But if, for example, you have Fulanis in Benue State, many of the farmers are Christians, but they are farmers first, if you see what I mean. So if a Fulani man attacks a farmer, it can very easily be characterized as a Muslim fighting a Christian, or vice versa. But everybody knows from just the history of these kinds of conflicts, and it's not just in Nigeria, almost all around the Sahelian countries, you have these same problems. And many times when people are moving, when the herdsmen are moving from the far north, coming down the valley, especially the Benue Valley area, some of them believe that if you don't get your cattle to that Benue Valley area, your cattle won't procreate well, and your cattle won't produce well. So they really, there are superstitions around it. So
superstition.
There's a superstition that they're heading for that Benue Valley. That's where they must. Their cattle must at least get there once in the season. So it is a mixture of all of that. So for me, I think that, in fact, when you look at some of the Fulanis, some of the Fulanis are not even Muslims anyway. Some of them are animists. In fact, many of them are animists. So they're not. So to describe it as a religious crisis is, in my view, to try and give it, a mischaracterization. Really, it is about water and land. The Fulani herdsman goes around the place. He's itinerant. He's a nomad, right? Looking for places to. But almost invariably, when they wander around like that, they go into people's farms and start eating up crops. The farmers react naturally. They must react. And that's why you found a lot of these.